It all was a bit of a flurry of activity in the Senate in the last couple of moments, Annelise. It was expected, but the chamber did deem it constitutional to move ahead.
That's the decision that's been made by the Senate, and that was the first hurdle. The next one is the most significant. That's when they're going to need 17 Republicans to vote with the Democrats to convict. And if you look at that margin there, it seems very unlikely they could convince another 11 to cross over to the Democrats. But you have to remember in this scenario that the audience is out there in the general public. This isn't a court where they need to convince the judges. The senators are more likely to turn their opinion based on what the general public reaction is to whatever they hear in that particular forum. So really the Democrats have had the early lead in this. They've had a very emotive start to this hearing. They've played a very long video showing some of the chaotic scenes. They've had a very emotive moment talking about the injuries that were sustained by police officers in this. And the Republicans have counted on this constitutional argument. They were really never going to succeed on this, just on the basis that you needed that 50% plus support. And with the Democrats having the numbers in the Senate, it really just wasn't in their favour, whether the point of law would be tried differently in a court or not. So this is the next critical part, where they decide whether Donald Trump did incite that insurrection. And the key to that is not really any of the facts in contention. It's just how culpable the senators decide Donald Trump's behaviour was.
Really interesting to see how this is going to end up. As you say, Annelise, the numbers that we just saw there in terms of the Republicans voting for the constitutionality, even of this impeachment trial to go ahead, is really not indicative about where this vote might end up. Why is it that the 11 Republicans wouldn't cross the floor? Are there threats behind the scenes, or essentially, do they come from areas in which there are a lot of Donald Trump supporters and they might actually be punished by voters in the midterms or upcoming or next election if they do impeach Donald Trump? Is that the fear?
That's just it, Laura. The support for Donald Trump hasn't died away among his supporters. He did get a very strong turnout at the election. Joe Biden just got a much stronger turnout. And so the Republicans risk alienating a lot of people if they do abandon Donald Trump, as much as many members of the Republican Party were horrified by what happened. And that was included in Schoen's defence that he mounted today, saying that no one defended what happened there. The question is, was Donald Trump responsible? And the biggest risk for the Republican Party is that they enrage Donald Trump enough that he'd start his own party, because he could really destroy the Republicans. Their base would be gone. And that's what the Democrats really are targeting in this as well. It's a win-win for them. Their base is telling them that Donald Trump needs to suffer consequences, and the best case scenario is that they could ban him from office for 4 years. So the cards are really all in their hand for this. What the Republicans need to do is walk that line, and that's why this constitutional argument mattered so much, because now Republicans can go back to their Trump-supporting electorates and say, look, we didn't support it, we don't think it was constitutional, and we don't have to talk about what actually happened and who was responsible. We just don't think you should impeach a president after they've left office, and that's a very neutral position for them to take.
Interesting what this does to the Republicans as well. There is divided opinion about how divided the Republicans are indeed, but how do they move on post-Trump? If it's not Trump at the next election, is there someone emerging as a contender?
Well, it's still so far off, and one thing that most Americans, I'd say Australians too, would hate is just discussing this stuff too far out, because they do get a bit fed up with politics. They're not as into it as you and I. But what I have heard from a lot of people is they really like Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka. If they don't see Donald Trump running in 2024, they'd like her. They also like Nikki Haley, and a lot of this comes down to the assumption that it would be Kamala Harris running, and so we could see 2 women running for office in 2024. But the anger over what's happened is just palpable on both sides. People are furious at the scenes they saw at the Capitol building. I cannot tell you how many people have told me they feel as upset about seeing what happened there on January 6th as they saw what happened on 9/11. And that's a really powerful thing for any American to say. And just the idea that the actual system's been compromised on both sides is what people are really frustrated and scared about as well. So Joe Biden has a challenge ahead of him for the next 2-4 years, and what we're going to see is just so many Americans calling for some kind of unity, but at the same time that won't happen if they cut off Donald Trump and cast him adrift.
Absolutely. Annelise, thanks so much.